So, I'm back. Truthfully, I never went anywhere. I was on an extended hiatus, enjoying playing Final Fantasy 14 and 16. A few of you have tossed some suggestions for topics, and I've heard you loud and clear. I just need to get some time to do it. Something that I sadly not had much because of work. Either way, I've been casually keeping up with home when I can, but one page that pissed me off to the point where I had to say something was page 832. The last video I made was when Cargo and Rogio were captured by the Foreign Grims. Before I can address page 832, we need to build up to that because a hell of a lot of things have happened between now and then. So I'm going to go over the main events that happened in chapter 12 for now, then move on to chapter 13, which is by far one of the cringiest chapters that has been produced, and I don't say that lightly. As we are exploring the moving pieces to this shit show, I figure that I can throw in some literary advice to writers to keep in mind as you're doing your story or building on your universe. Today's topic is one that I've said many times before, but I have never had a section dedicated to it, and that is continuity. Continuity is what binds a story together. This includes the characters, characterizations, the plot, the setting, even the universe that the story is based on. Those that follow home from the beginning up until now will note that Keek has no concept of continuity within the home universe. It has gotten to the point where within the same chapter, details that were mentioned are overlooked or ignored within a few pages of each other. One of the key differences between a good writer and a great writer is the ability to have a singular character's action have far-reaching consequences. Not just to the character in question, but to those around him directly and indirectly. A good way to look at this is throwing a stone in the pond. The stone will create ripples in the water. It stretches out and disrupts the original flow, in this case, a scene or the story itself. You get splashes, the water gets displaced, and some of it may go on land, some might disrupt other rocks, and if it's big enough, it changes the layout of the pond. Think of each rock as a separate plot point. Each pond is a different setting. The items within the pond as objects, the fish that swim about are different characters. One action affects them all. An author knows this relationship and acts accordingly to the narrative. Keek doesn't take this into consideration, which is why whenever something happens to the characters, it feels one-dimensional or flat. This is because the ripple that I mentioned doesn't get applied to all the characters within the story, but only the main character and perhaps the few that are close to them. This phenomenon in Home is going to get worse because of several key things. First, Keek can't take criticism. In fact, I argue that he tends to double down when the plot holes in his story become apparent. You see this in the comments section, especially assuming that it even gets through the staffing filters on Comic Fury. When a commenter asks about a particular scene and Keek responds, he usually is very vague, makes something up on the spot to cover himself, or the worst instant is editing pages without letting the reader know. This is what was apparent when Keek shifted dialogue between Cargo and Romer when he favored the Rogio and Romer pairing. Another instance is when Keek painted a cloth to show that the Meteor Tribe was hunting Rannoch and he couldn't smell Rogio. The cloth wasn't here when the comic page was dropped, and was added later to give the illusion that Romer had a great strategy, but it failed because he lost the cloth? I don't know. I can't make sense of stupid here. The other thing is that Staz is gone. Fucking called it. Therefore, his beta reader and editor is gone. I'm not getting into the specifics of what went on, but needless to say that Staz has been ejected from Keek's inner circle. While it is impossible to say exactly how much work she did trying to steer the comic to having a coherent narrative, expects the quality of the writing to go down. Yes, Keek has another co-writer and also happens to be in a relationship with Keek, but I see this dude being a yes man rather than trying to offer Keek genuine suggestions that the story actually needs. I find it also weird that the person that you are dating is automatically a co-writer, but you do you, I guess. Let this be a warning to anyone that chooses to offer their services to another person. Get that shit in writing, so you don't get fucked over. There was real money that went into this comic, from Patreon to commissions, and everything in between, and the one that got burned was Staz in all fronts. even if you take into consideration Staz did 8 pages for Keek, considering that the comic gets released 4 days out of the month. Along with the Patreon pledges, that's nearly $3,000 that she gave Keek, and what is sad is, I'm sure that she did more than that. Also, an unintended consequence of Staz being dropped from the comic was that all of her footprints within the story are being erased. I mentioned that the Bog Dogs were Staz's creation, and wouldn't you know it, they're being erased not only for the wiki, but got booted out of the story in a spectacular manner. More on that later. The story is not following a script. Readers that have followed Home from the very beginning can see a clear path for each character and their motives. After chapter 6 notably, Keek is engaging in pantster writing. He isn't good at it, and considering he steals several ideas from his Discord and comment section of Home, well, if you keep leaning on a crutch, you eventually forget how to walk. When I say Keek is creatively bankrupt, this is what I mean. He can't picture his own world or how it operates. He needs others to do it for him, and that's a problem when you have no script. Fan service. This is a huge problem within Home and explains why characters behave oddly than they did in previous chapters, and in some cases, pages from each other. I'm not saying that fan service is bad. I know Keek once did cameo appearances within his story, and there was no damage done in the story when that happened. But now we are at the point where Keek will sabotage relationships with characters, or the worst case, break a character's traits as seen in the story. This is becoming a huge problem for the later chapters of the book and ruins not only the character but the continuity. So I want to back up and go back to before Cargo and Rogi are captured by highlighting a little interaction with Fief and the two sisters called Majava and Fala Java, I think. As it turns out, these two sisters are the offspring of a dog Cargo helped free, Isabella. This would be excellent character development for Cargo, knowing that his efforts did at least help some dogs in the tribe besides Farah. In fact, it would be nice if Cargo had other friends besides Farah and Romer, but like everything else when it comes to women, they are only here for a brief moment and they disappear into the ether. Also, random side note, hares usually have a winter coat to not stick out to predators during the cold season, so the brown hair looks rather out of place here. Anyway, moving on. Because Keek likes to skip around and not finish one plot point at a time, I'd like to take this time to discuss Rovanian, Fief, Jala, and Rome. The opening scene is Thakur building a fence and Rome not helping but just admiring the manual labor that is being done. As the two speak, Jala passes them and Rome remarks that she has been avoiding him. Before Romer and Thakur can have a heart-to-heart about it, there is a howl that rips through the territory. Rome asks, "Is that a wolf howl?" And Jala and Thakur seem surprised. And here I'm asking myself, wait, what? Since when can Rome tell the differences between a wolf and dog howls? I know this might not seem like much, but this has heavy implications. If Rome could tell that the difference between howls, think of it. He should have known that he was howling back to a wolf when he was in Ravencrest. This also implies that he deliberately put Jala in danger, since I'm sure that he knows the Ravencrest brothers should have made their distaste to wolves known. I know that this is a Keek fuck up, but it's a huge one that breaks the aspect of his continuity. As the trio get closer, they realize that the wolf howl belongs to Augir. Rome somehow knows that this is Jala's brother. Jala comes to Augir's defense, and she rubs me the wrong way when she calls her brother a pup when she was born in the same letter as him. It's very demeaning to Augir, and it shows just how little he is thought of since they are implying that he's defenseless on his own. This is the same treatment Keek gives Era, and I get that they are supposed to be the weak ones and handicapped, but I've always felt like this has been executed poorly within this comic. When the intruders are made aware that they will accept the consequences of attacking the Heavenreach tribe on their land, they back off and Augir is taken back to the tribe. The scene that follows is Jala speaking about Augir's deficiencies, and it comes out that Jala has a partner. This is something that should have been said at the beginning when it was obvious Rome was flirting with her, but I guess better late than never. At least I can say Jala never tried to fuck or sleep with Rome, which is more than I can say with Rove. Rove has been traveling with the guild on the northern route. As it turns out, there is another tribe that appears in the bog. the Bayous. These dogs produce paint from glowing algae, which would ward off the night creatures. It sounds like a reasonable solution, but since Staz did the unimaginable, this plotline is going to be fucked up later. Later that night, Rove and Fief are out alone, and we get this dumb scene of Fief telling Rove that she thought the tribe meant more to him than his family. Bitch, what? You knew why he joined the guild. He fucking told you, and you kept his little secret all this time. How on earth do you figure that he would drop everything for you? Now we have a situation that Rove is confused because he has Jala to look after, and now he confesses his feelings for Fief to the point where Rove asks her to leave Shiverfall and come with him. If that isn't a recipe for disaster, I don't know what is. Fast forward to the guild meeting the Flameguard tribe, which makes no fucking sense. Keep in mind, the tribe told Solar Stag to go fuck themselves when they didn't issue a punishment to Jala. So why is the guild still coming here? Why would Solar Stag still want their scrolls? The answer to that is never addressed. But this scene is done so that Axie can show her distaste towards wolves, and show just how much of a racist piece of shit that she is. Fief can tell something is up, and makes up an excuse to go look for a camping ground. And nearly 400 pages later, Rove finally admits that he has a mate. Now this is something Fief deserved to know when they were starting to get close, more so when Rove asked if she wanted to run off with him, but no, it finally comes off now. You would think that Fief would be hurt or not enraged by this betrayal, but instead she said that it's okay, and goes to the others, which is so unbelievable it took me out of the story. At the very least, she gave Rove a stipulation that he needs to make up his mind by the end of the journey, and leave the guild if he wants to be with Jala, which is a reasonable request for Rove for being such a piece of shit to her. Fief says that she will cover Rove if he wants to go see Jala, which he does. The next time we see Jala and Rome, they are watching the sunrise. Rove comes up behind the pair, and we're met with a lukewarm reunion by just having Rove and Jala nuzzle each other. I'm sure you can guess that was coming since they don't kiss. Jala makes an excuse to get rid of Rome, and I have to say the conversation that happens between Rove and Jala seems forced. One of the first things that Jala mentions to Rove is how much he values family, which is straight up bullshit. I'm not talking about him using the guild to look for his family, but more how he never asks about Jala, Ranja, Rome, or Kier, and I don't know, come to him in search for the rest of the fractured family. It's a false narrative of this character and only used for plot convenience. I don't think that he gives a damn that his family is not together so much as he doesn't know where they are in Adra, which is fine, but be honest about it. As you might have expected, the breakup between Rove and Jala happens when she mentions that they have grown older. Quote, "It's been so long since we last saw each other, and so much has happened since then. We were young when we first got together. And this world, the individuals in it, I've been forced to change and mature in ways I don't think I would have if I was still living in Nesmunder. First of all, you conceited Muppet. You haven't done shit in the time that you became leader of Heavenreach. Her allies that she made in Shiverfall, for example, was due mostly to Iope approaching her rather than the other way around. Second, what new members have you gotten? Rome? He's an attempted murderer who happens to be your soon-to-be boyfriend. Augur came to you. But short of that, there have been no other dogs that she has made an attempt to be friends with here. I find this all a bit odd to say, since there really is no indication about how much time has passed up until this point. It feels like a year, 2 years at most. Sure, you can say a lot has happened in it, but I honestly feel that this is a bullshit response to have them break up and do fan service shipping. Either way, the two of them are officially done and can pursue Rome and Fief respectfully, without being accused of cheating on each other. We need to go over the relationship, and I say that term loosely, with Iberion and Ranak, since it was awkwardly inserted into this chapter as well. Iberion starts off with a hunting trip to test Ranak's skills. As it turns out, days of laying on his back and being manipulative bastard has made him rather useless. Iberion has a pseudo-reflective conversation with Ranak, asking him why he came to Southspear, and makes it seem like the tribe is a near-death sentence, with how there is barely any food or shelter. This works in direct opposition to what is expressed within the tribe. For one, just about all of these dogs are not skin and bone like Forgrim, and they seem to have carved a decent life for themselves by stealing from others. This is yet another attempt to make it seem like there's something more going on within this tribe, but really there isn't. The comic has never shown Sal Spear truly struggling against the elements. It's not clear whether the two had a successful hunt or not, but by the time night falls, Rannick is so sexually frustrated that he calls on to one of the guards that he met earlier. His name really isn't important, just keep in mind that Rannick fucks him because reasons, I guess. It comes out that Iberion is aware that Rannick fucked Kagos, that's his name, and only encouraged such behavior because it pleases their spirit. Kinda makes me wonder if the spirit watches them do it. Fucking nasty, man. Moving on, the South Spear members are preparing for a raid, which is suspicious as hell for a number of reasons. For one, unlike the last raid they did, there is no wagon or beast of burden shown. It makes me wonder just what they expected to even steal from these guys. That is a stupid mistake on their part, but let's move on since this is a trap set up by none other than the bounty hunters. Now normally, I like seeing the bounty hunters, but something is seriously wrong with this version of them. When we last saw them, when they were tracking down Jala and Thacker, there were at least 10 of them hunting down 2 dogs. By that logic, if they were hunting down known robbers, their numbers should have been in the 20s if not 30s. Now the reason why this didn't happen is because God forbid Keek kill off Rannick or Iberion, so they were giving a handicap. Also, another stupid thing that I found laughable is the fact that there's a random oak tree in the middle of the desert. Again, they are in a fucking desert. Where the hell do you randomly get what is essentially an oak tree in the middle of nowhere? And not only that, it has exactly one branch. One branch that furthers the plot armor given to Iberion. How this tree doesn't snap with the added weight of a lion plus the weight of Iberion took me out of the scene. The bitch has claws and fangs, and she goes to slowly hang him while there are other threats in the area. Who the hell does this? No one but Keek. As you have already expected, Iberion gets saved, and the pussy bounty hunters retreat because of one death. It's underwhelming and a pathetic show for one of the more formidable aspects of the Solar Stag tribe. When Rannick and the others arrive back at South Spear, Rannick's heroic behavior has resulted in him being promoted to a Wrangler. When asked if anything will be done about the death of Farquhar, Iberion responds that it is a loss that they have to accept, and here's where the mischaracterization comes into play. Rannick has been shown to be a monster that does whatever he needs to do to get ahead. He doesn't give a damn about morals or how someone felt about him as long as he got power. Look at the way he treated Rogia when he was still with Ronja. Him suddenly being concerned about what another tribe thinks about him is a break of his character. But before we can contemplate this change, Iberion snaps at Rannick and states that the reason he belongs in South Spear is because he called upon a spirit that destroyed his tribe, including, you guessed it, his brother, in Rogia, which Rannick somehow saved from that fate. If you think that revelation is somehow going to change Rannick, well, you are wrong. He goes back to fucking another dog in the tribe because he can't ask Iberion. I think this is a bit over the top since all the guy did was ask Rannick who he lost, and Rannick flips out and tells the guy to never speak to him again. It's honestly been so long that I need to go over the bullshit of the Foreign Rim plot again. Rogia is still having nightmares about the beast inside of him attacking Ronja and Romer. It has been bothering him to the point where he has bags under his eyes and cannot sleep normally. He wakes up one night and decides that he needs to leave the tribe in order to keep everyone safe. Romer convinces him to stay and they have sex to cure the pain away. I guess. When they finish, Romer mentions that the spirit might be the way for Rogia to get over his nightmares. I'm not sure when Cargo would have mentioned the Sapphire Elk within the story, but I'm too lazy to look at the earlier pages to verify that, or it is just another offhanded thing to move the plot along. In either case, it's clear that Rogia has reservations about asking spirits for help, but he decides to make the journey alone. The next time we see Rogia, he's at the summit, and his ghoul keeps harassing him as he continues forward, as if trying to discourage his journey. When he reaches the, well, we'll call it the resting place of the spirit, it has a stone that has these set of instructions. Quote, "Lay down your armor and step forward. Mind unbound, heart open. You are exposed, vulnerable, accessible to my power. Fear not, for I shall not punish or abandon you. Give your voice to your worries, and I shall listen. Which, from what anyone can surmise, is to remove all of your clothing and weapons. You are supposed to be vulnerable. So, the reason why the ghoul has been bothering Rogio is that his life has had great sadness. Which is bullshit, because he seemed to have a jolly old time fucking Rannoch and being in this hype on the pecking order when it came to the old Meteor tribe under Rannoch's father. This is a very contrived way to make the audience feel sorry for Rogio here. But really, there's nothing that the Slimeball has done up to now to feel guilty about besides getting caught in the act. He fucked Romer, he killed on command, he treated Romer like shit instead of talking to him. No matter how much Keeks wants to try to push this false narrative, his continuity shows the opposite each and every time. So here we are. Rogio is in the space in between life and death. And I just want to pause here to point out that fucker brought a knife. You know, the thing that we was told to leave alone before showing himself to the Sapphire Elf? By that logic, he shouldn't be even allowed to be in here. But because Keek, for some strange reason, has an currency to show what teeth and claws can do, we get this pissant fight scene. And ironically, all those points that I mentioned are the reason why he feels guilty. But when he brought all those instances upon himself within the story, this is what I meant by those ripples when it came to continuity. It stopped at Rogio and never extended maybe past Romer and Cargo, and no one else felt the adverse effects of his actions. I'm sure when it comes to no surprise to anyone that Rogio wins over the beast. So all that build up, and by just a Thanos snap, all of Rogio's problems disappeared with no consequences to him or anyone else. We still aren't done with the scene though, as apparently Cargo has been trapped in the world in between life and death. Rogio pulls him on his shoulder, and the Sapphire Elf ejects them both from the world in between. I know I discussed that Cargo should have bled out by now, but the power of author negligence has Cargo and Rogio in the clutches of the big bad saber cats. I've already gone on why the Forengrims are out of place in my Forengrim video, so let's dive into the plot itself. As stated, the reason that the dogs are being held is because they are going to be sacrificed for a feeding ritual that happens every 4 days. But I'm sure that the protruding bones on their members' bodies is a good indication that their god will be more important than taking care of the fucking pride. Regardless, our two heroes are captured. You'll have to listen to the Forengrim topic on what I think about how these saber cats fit within the continuity, but let's just say that it doesn't make much sense. Evolutionary, a saber cat should have existed before a Taiga lion and a Ziaquo on Earth, or the dominant cat on Adra. Them being reduced to numbers and no one knowing about them breaks the continuity. Think about it. It's implied that the dogs hunted the Forengrim to extinction, yes? Why haven't the dogs held around trophies or skulls of their conquests if the saber cats were such pests? And don't tell me, well, there's enough screen time to share them. No, that's bullshit, because when we saw Lysenia, she was on a throne that was clearly made from mammoth tusk. Also, this kind of begs into question how many dogs have been on Adra and for how long. This isn't me nitpicking the damn story so much as me asking questions that should have been taken into consideration when Keek decided to introduce another species on this planet. All he had to do was make another Taiga lion tribe, and he would have been fine. But as he keeps adding DARPG elements, he sacrificed his story for a new breed. Moving away from this, Cargo notices a little cub that has been spying on the conversation. 2 days later, Rogio spots the cub and tries to have a conversation when the mom comes in to protect the cub. Rogio asks why all the Forengrims are blind, and the mother responds that their spirit, Kanug, grants them health and prosperity, which... What? I get that they're blind and they don't know any better, but their stomachs have got to be going off like a damn car engine. There's no way that these cats could say with confidence that they are taken care of and are prosperous, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. This is the only time where Rogio is right in saying that the chieftain is abusing his power and his subordinates. Another Forengrim chases the pair away and a snowstorm appears. Apparently the cub Darkio has listened to several dogs tell the same story, and that's why he knows Rogio and Cargo are innocent. The cub frees them, and their mother agrees to finally escape their tribe and their brutal ways. For once, Keek understands that Cargo's wounds haven't been mended, and feigns that Cargo will be left behind, but not really, as the chieftain realizes that their prey is gone. They give chase and run over an iced-over sea bank. The chieftain throws a spear that pierces the mom's shoulder, and she seems to drown since Cargo and the others can't find her. They slip out of the icy waters and take refuge in a cave to warm up and avoid freezing to death. Fast forward to a few pages later. The meteor tribe is roasting meat over the fire. Ranja asks her pups to get Romer and join in the feast. When the pups find him, however, Romer is clearly frustrated and doing weapons training. And I actually do like Naevia. It has a moment with Romer and tries to cheer him up without saying a word. Ranja comes to get Romer herself after a little bit later, and it turns out that Rogio and Darkyo have arrived home. Over the horizon, Cargo finally shows up. Romer runs up to him, and the two have a moment together. And the chapter ends with the Will-O-Wisp in the backdrop of the Meteor Tribe territory. Notice that Cargo's rooms are never addressed because he doesn't need a pity party anymore. At this point, it doesn't matter since he's emotionally trapped with Rogio. And that's it for this chapter. Farah shared a moment with Philae. Ranja's getting closer to Deer Dog, but overall, this chapter of the story was manufactured drama for the sake of drama. Even after breaking down each major sub-story within this chapter, where these scenes are set up to drive Rogio to be the hero, Ronak has more ooh-woo-woo layers, and the relationship between Ro and Jala end on a good note. That's what the author wants you to believe, but that isn't the case here. The characters that I mentioned have not earned their right to be hoisted up on this pedestal. Rogio isn't remorseful about anything that has happened to him at this point. Putting bags under his eyes and having a few nightmares isn't going to cut it. This character never used to use the words "I'm sorry" within this comic before, and it's pretty telling considering that he has killed someone and pressured Romeo to sleep with him, setting off the chain of events. He isn't brave for facing down his demon. He did it to feel better about himself. His world, and that of Keek for that matter, revolve around him, which is why, from a continuity point of view, him killing his demon felt hollow. I have no idea why Keek continues to redeem Ronak, but it's clear that the audience is supposed to sympathize with killing his lover Rogio because he couldn't handle the concept of love making him weak. Meanwhile, here he sleeps with every type of dog because he's too much of a coward to bed the one he wants. And keep in mind, it's not because he loves Iberian, it's just because he's a substitute for Rogio, who he thinks is dead. Rove and Jala were already cheating with each other months before their breakup, so of course the impact it had on the reader was an expectation more than a surprise. Not once up till now did Rove or Jala mention each other, until it was obvious that their other partner was getting too close. It's a hollow gesture to appease a fan who want to ship Jala and Rome, and Thief and Rove. The pieces that Keek is trying to move within his continuity don't work because he won't respect them. So now that I've caught everyone up into speed, now let's enter the next chapter of this clusterfuck. Reading it feels like your soul is leaving your body and makes me want to vomit blood. I'll explain my reasons soon enough though. Asher out.